Tim has scaled multi-million dollar businesses. He is directly overseeing, he's got 40 people that is in across his 8 companies currently right now.
One of the secrets of entrepreneurial success is that if you start a business and you're reliant on the profit from that business to replace your income day one, you're going to be in trouble.
Welcome to the Mark Ferris Experience, where we are interviewing Tim Salter. Tim has scaled multi-million dollar businesses. He is directly overseeing, he's got 40 people that is in across his 8 companies currently right now. So Tim is in the drug and alcohol testing industry, and you can imagine how interesting of an industry that would be through COVID. So we're going to be touching on that. And we're going to be touching on how Tim actually scaled his businesses up and what made him successful. So first off, Tim, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Well, looking forward to getting started. Why don't we start with the backstory here? Like, what was it that inspired you to start your, say, first business?
Well, my first business was when I was a teenager, and I was just trying to make some extra money. And I didn't like what McDonald's was paying, so I ventured out on my own and started a window cleaning company. And it was I was making a lot more than I was making at McDonald's. But after growing up a little bit, going to college, looking at career options, I realized that I should get serious about a career. And so I thought the recipe for success at that time in my life, in my early 20s, was, to get a good paying job with a pension and a future, and end up working for the Ontario government. It was a great job. My salary doubled from what I was making as a salesperson. Pension, I'm like, I'm 50, I'm retiring. And, we were fortunate enough that I was making enough working for the government that my wife Tracy was able to stay home with the kids. So it was all clicking, right? And I was a civil servant, and I just couldn't help myself though. So I'm working for the Ontario government, and I've got ideas. So I brought those to my manager, and I'm like, oh, what about this? What about that? What if we were to change that? And for the first few ideas, I think she entertained me, but then after a while, she's like, I don't want your ideas, in the nicest way possible. And that saying, think outside the box. Well, the government's kind of version of that is think, inside the box. Here's your box, stay in the box, and just do your job. And that was just not an environment for me. But I was in a bit of a predicament. Here I am at that time, early 30s, and one baby and another one on the way, and a lifestyle to maintain. It's not easy just to give up that great job. So I knew that it wasn't going to be enough for myself. And my focus at the time of starting my first kind of adult business, if it would be, was not to become rich. It was at that time a focus on, can I work for myself and provide the same lifestyle for my family that I have right now from my current job? And I was reading a book, and inside the book there was a story about someone in my kind of situation where they were looking to make a change in their life. And
what was that, Tim?
That was Success Principles by Jack Canfield.
Got it.
And the story was about a man that wanted to go to med school. I'm trying to remember this story now. And he had a young family that he was supporting, and he wanted to continue his schooling, but at the same time have enough money so his wife could stay at home with their newborn, and they essentially replace his income by starting a small business on the side, and it was selling drug tests. So I remember the exact scenario. I was laying in bed. It was like 1:00 in the morning. I was doing some late night reading. My wife's asleep beside me, and I read this story about drug tests. I'm like, and I've read a lot of like stories, kind of those, oh, I did this and I did that. I've never seen a drug test for sale in Canada. And it just struck me odd that, well, here's a whole industry. This guy made a lot of money selling drug tests because not only did he, pay for his med school, but he was able to, support his family as well. I'm like, I gotta get up and look into this right away. I got like instantly excited about it. So I went downstairs and I had a little room in the basement, an office, and I started doing web search. Sure enough, couldn't find any drug tests for sale in Canada. Went to bed. I went back to bed, and when we got up in the morning, I told my wife, I'm like, we're getting into the drug testing business. And we didn't have a lot of extra money back then, because even though I was making pretty good money, it was just enough money. So it's not like we were sitting on a huge pile of cash ready to pile into a new venture. Um, it was tight, and I had to figure out how to do it myself. Back in 2008, there was no Shopify's, right? There was no like one click and you have an online store. It was go build your own e-commerce store. Here's a software program you have to install yourself on a server. You've got to configure it. You've got to design it. You've got to make it work. And I did. I spent 3 months learning how to build an online store. I called up some manufacturers of drug tests, pretended that I was big time when I was not. So that absorbed some industry lingo from my online research. So I was able to convince them that I was somewhat serious about this. And I told them that I wanted to order one box of everything they had for samples for evaluation. And so I spent $500 on my credit card and got these samples and then took each drug test out of these boxes and listed them individually on our brand new website that we just launched. And didn't get a sale day one, got a sale day two. Then day three, I got a couple more. And then by the end of the month, we were selling quite a few tests. And, we then placed another order, and that order came in. And I remember it starting to see like, those kind of stop motion videos where things just like grow over time. That was kind of our basement. Month one, there was a couple boxes. Month two, there was 10. Month three, there was 50. And then 50 became more, and then it became our entire basement, and then the garage. And then about a year into it, we rented our first office. And the job that I had at the time, Mark, was one of the things that made it really great was that it was a 24-hour emergency, 24-hour business in emergency health services. So I worked 12-hour shifts from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And I was, had a great relationship with my managers. So I was able to negotiate with them because, nobody likes to work on the weekends, right? And so I said, hey, here's my proposition. Why don't you let me work 12 hours, Friday, Saturday, Sunday night? That's pretty much my shift for the whole week, 36 hours of work. And that's just going to be my standing shift from here on in, instead of kind of like rotating days and nights. They were agreeable because those were hard shifts to fill.
Nobody wanted those shifts.
Nobody wanted the weekend midnight shifts. Those were not well
liked.
Those were not in demand. So and I did that for 3 years, man. 3 years, Friday, Saturday, Sunday night, 36 hours, and then Monday to Friday, from the moment I woke up until the evening, just working on the business. And it was difficult. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, because the job that I had was not easy. It wasn't a go in, kick your feet up on the desk, relax for 12-hour job. It was a difficult job, and it was stressful, and it was an emotionally draining job, and it was hard. It was a hard job. And then, to refocus, kind of Monday morning and say, okay, now I got to put in my 50 plus hours from Monday to Friday on my own, building my own business, and hiring my first few people, and taking their well-being under my wing. Got to make sure they get paid, they've got bills to take care of as well. So it was a very stressful 3 years, and I learned a lot of lessons, but that's how it all started, and that's how I got it done, while maintaining that job, looking after my family, and starting a business.
Okay, so I just want to recap here. So you picked up Jack Canfield's book and you read an example in the book and you literally took the idea out of the book and created a business out of that idea example that was given. Uh,
Exactly. That's exactly what I did. I just copied it. I did not invent this. I did not come up with like an epiphany. I didn't have a light bulb moment. I just said, this sounds good. Let's do it.
yeah. No, so this is such a great example of taking action, seeing an opportunity, then taking action on it. But what was interesting next is that you acted big before you became big. So you called these companies, you acted big, you played the part, and then you actually went the extra mile. You must have really believed on what you were doing because you put $500 on your credit card to be able to test the theory out. And so you saw an opportunity in Canada. You didn't see anything else. So you took action, you acted big, but then you tested, you saw that there was an opportunity. And then as you started selling these, you realized that you had a business and there was a marketplace out there for that, which so there's a lot there. And then here's the thing that entrepreneurial, like being an entrepreneur, it sounds sexy, right? It sounds like, it's all sunshine and rainbow and you sit back and kick your feet up. But what they don't see is, Tim, like for 3 years, people say they don't have enough time to work in a full-time job. You worked Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 36 hours, a full-time job on the weekend, and then did your business to kick it off for not 1 year, two, but like for 3 full years, that early stage. Here's my question is, what helped you get through that early stage of kicking off the business, working a full-time job? Like what kept you going for 3 years through that period?
I think it was a number of things. Um, Firstly, I could see it growing, right? So it wasn't like we were stagnant for 3 years. Every month we were growing, every quarter, every year, growing, growing, growing. And certainly in the early years, it was tempting, right? We are making some good money, and it was tempting to take some of that money out and line my own pockets, but I didn't. I reinvested everything for the 3 years because I didn't need the money because I was working full time. And I think that's one of the secrets of entrepreneurial success is that if you start a business and you're reliant on the profit from that business to replace your income day one, you're going to be in trouble. And that's where taking on debt, is part of that new entrepreneurial experience, which is not a great thing, right? So you live off debt until you hope you can make money. Where I was fortunate enough that I could come up with a way to continue to work and reinvest the profits back into the business to grow it. And so seeing that business grow month over month and being able to hire people and be able to stock our shelves and invest into, the future of the business, whether it be technology or be able to afford to buy new computers from the profits of the business. And that first $500 was the only time I had to borrow to run the business.
Love that. No, so that growth was the thing that was giving you encouragement because you saw that you were building something, and that's what allowed you to keep going through that early stage.
Yeah. And the sheer panic of, worrying about your staff and your team that you're growing and you're nurturing, right? It's something, you don't really think about it when you have a job, right? You just go to the job and then your employer pays you, right? And you get that paycheck every 2 weeks. And you really don't think about how hard it is sometimes for employers to make payroll. It's from all the businesses I've looked at in the past, Mark, that labor line is always the biggest one on the P&L. And, you know, making payroll is a challenge for most businesses out there. And certainly in the first few years, it was a challenge for me. Like I was genuinely worried. I'm like, what is going on? Why are website sales down this week? What's happening? Because I was counting on this much revenue and we only got this much. And I'm not sure if, how are we going to make payroll? We got all these people that have mortgages and rent payments and car payments and insurance payments. They're counting on that money being in their bank account every other Thursday. And if it's not there, that to me is would be devastating. And I think that was you've got the good stresses, right? Like the excitement of growing a business. You've got the you're feeling a sense of growth and energy from this business that you're growing. But then you've also got like, oh my gosh, these people are relying on me to build something to so they get paid every 2 weeks, and that's a big motivator for me. I didn't want to let the team down. I didn't want to sully the good name of the company. Right? I didn't want to hear from an employee that, are we getting paid today? No, because if they're focused on that, they're not focused on what I need them to be focused on. If they're worried about getting paid. So, I'm proud of the fact that since day one, right, that we hired our first person through, coming into our 15th year now, we've never missed payroll once. And, to claim that, it's like, well, of course you didn't. You're a business. You got to pay your employees. Well, that's, there's not a lot of small business owners, because I still consider myself a small business owner. Mark, I'm not a medium size or enterprise level. I'm a small business owner. And, there's a lot of small business owners out there that have had the same struggles as I have, right? That maybe they've foregone their own paychecks, right? They haven't taken that bonus dividend or distribution that they thought they would that quarter, that month, just to make payroll, right? To make sure they don't let down the people that are on their team. So I think it's a combination, right, of being excited about your new business, but at the same time, not letting down your vendors, your stakeholders, your landlord, and of course the number one asset of a company, your team.
Yeah, 100%. So, Tim, what advice would you give a business owner that is doing everything on their own and they are worried and they're seriously concerned? Should I hire somebody? Should I take that risk of hiring that first key hire? Like, what advice would you give that entrepreneur that is in that stage of they're overwhelmed, they're doing everything on their own, and they need some help? What advice would you give them?
Wow, that's a tough question, because it's easy to answer if you give some fluff that you read in a book or a guidance document, but that's really not what the real world looks like. Uh, because anytime you bring on somebody to help you, it's coming out of your pocket as an entrepreneur. And I think you have silly sayings. Oh, it's just business, right? Where people think that just because you have a business name, that you're some sort of megacorp, right? That is invulnerable. That's not the case for most business owners out there. They're just regular folks, right? Regular people that are struggling to keep their business afloat. And if you want to consider hiring somebody for your team, you got it. It's coming out of your pocket. It's coming out of your jeans if you're a small business owner, and it's got to be worth it. So my advice to anyone that's thinking about it is, I guess, twofold. Firstly, it's got to make economic sense in that if you're a plumber, right, and you are charging $100 an hour, and you want to hire another plumber to work with you, and you're going to be paying $100 an hour, it makes no sense to hire another plumber for your team. But if you can go out there and you can charge $100 an hour for your services, but instead of doing your services, you're sitting in front of a computer doing accounting, and you could pay someone a lot less than $100 an hour to do that accounting work for you and put yourself out on the road for 8 hours a day, making $800, that's when it starts making sense. There's got to be an ROI on your investment. And all you have to trade when you're starting out, when you're new, is your time. That's the only thing you have from an equity perspective. And so figure out a way that you can trade time for money. And if you are trading time for money, then trade it for the most amount of money you can get for your hour of work. And for, say, someone in the services industry, like a plumber, I noted, or someone who can, build businesses or create websites, that's the work you need to be doing. Pay someone else to do the other stuff.
So this is such a key nugget here for business owners. Such a key nugget is to figure out what you're worth per hour. And so what you do is you take your overall revenue and you figure out how you take your overall revenue divided by 2,000 hours. So that is your overall per hour job. Now the key is when you start going and looking at each of the activities that you end up doing, the question to ask is, how much could I hire somebody per hour to do this job? And so if you realize that, maybe going out in sales, you can make X amount more per hour, that's where you want to start doing more of those hours in those higher producing roles. So the idea of hiring somebody is not to just kick your feet up. The idea of hiring somebody is buying back time so that you can deploy that new time, that newfound time in higher productive hour activities. And so, Tim, you hit on something that's such a key point. And so the reality is, if you're working on your own and you're doing everything, there's some jobs you're doing that you could hire somebody for 15, 20 bucks an hour, right? And so that's where, if you can hire somebody to do those lower activities, lower producing activities, say a lot of times it's administrative work, right? If you can hire somebody to do that, you take those saved hours and you put it into perhaps sales, where you're speaking with potential customers that can bring in not $20 an hour or 40 or 50, but maybe $500 an hour. And so the more you can start to level up, the more productive your time is going to be, until you get right to the top where you're just focusing on vision and building an actual team itself. And that's such a core principle to business building, Tim. That's such a key nugget there that you had mentioned.
And I often speak with my customers that use one of our businesses, and that's a technology platform called Veryport. And we built Veryport to help streamline the way that drug testing is done. And it's a fantastic platform. And we've worked it out. It saves about 65% of labor time over doing things manually or without a technology solution. And when I speak to those customers, in the drug testing biz, I often tell them, I'm like, it's not a free platform. It costs money. But unlike some expenses that you have with your business that are, you have to pay, like insurance. There's no real ROI on insurance. It's a rainy day policy. Hopefully, you never have a claim, but if you do, it doesn't wipe you out. But there's no realized return on that. And everyone, I think, pretty much feels like you're always going to pay more into insurance than you're ever going to get back from it. But when you start looking at technology, like investing into something like Veryport, there's an ROI there because you're getting your time back. And it's not going to pay you, it's not going to make you money, but it's going to give you time back. And drug testing is a very administrative heavy service. There's a lot of paperwork that needs to be done, from chains of custody to reporting to documentation. It's arduous. So if you look at the administrative workload that you have to undertake as a provider of drug testing services in our industry, and then how you make money in the drug testing business by doing drug testing, right? I joke around with my customers, and I say, if I ever talk to a provider that has figured out a way to make money off of admin work in this industry, I'm going to bottle it up and sell it, and I'm going to be, a multi-millionaire overnight with that. But I've never heard it, I've never seen it, and I probably never will, because it's just time suck. So it's not always necessarily I'm going to go out and hire someone, right? And this is kind of where I started earlier about investing into technologies. Because if you find a technology platform or a software solution that's going to save you time, then the ROI is not just, giving your time back so you can go and do more drug testing or go do more sales, as you pointed out. We're not talking about a few $100s a month invested into a technology solution. We're talking about tens of thousands per year you're investing into that person to offload work on you.
100%. So good. So you took that step, you hired people, you scaled it up now where you have 40 people that are they're working within your companies. What would you say were maybe some regular habits or routines that you got into that really helped you scale your business, whether it's from a productivity, overall scaling, or maybe quality of life that you had throughout this period of launch to 40 people running multi-million-dollar businesses?
Here's my one of my life hacks for business, and that is early morning meetings. Because when you're working hard as an entrepreneur, you're starting your business, or you're just a dedicated person, um, there's a lot of business doesn't stop at 5 o'clock, right? Your team may start checking out at 5, right? But you're not stopping at 5 o'clock. I don't know any successful person that punches a time clock at 5 and says, I'm done for the day. So there's oftentimes you're working into the early evening, or sometimes late at night, and there's an enticement there in the morning, right? It's like, oh, I worked late last night. I'm gonna take it easy this morning, or I'm gonna sleep in, or I'm gonna have a second cup of coffee and just chill out, or whatever you convince yourself that you deserve a break. Um, and certainly, I fall into that often myself, right? Yeah, it's just human. But scheduling that early morning meeting, and it's a daily, right? And it's not crazy early. It's 8 o'clock, right? 8 a.m.
And so
It's reasonable.
this is the whole team that you have. Is it like a morning huddle at 8 o'clock?
One of the teams. So I have multiple team huddles every morning, depending on which team I have to communicate with. But I try to meet with every team each morning. It's just a quick huddle, right? But just poke my nose in the door, virtual door now, and say, hey, I'm here. Let's talk. But the first one kicks off at 8, and so I gotta be up. I gotta be ready. I gotta be in the right mindset. I gotta be sitting at my desk, ready to go, take on the day. That means I've already got up. I've done my exercising. I've done my stretching, and I've had something to eat, and I've had my morning coffee, and I'm prepared to start at 8 because that's my first meeting. And that's a great little hack of getting early morning commitments that you can't miss to get your day started on time every day.
So Tim, you just hit on, like, this is a major gold nugget here. So what ended up happening, even for our real estate brokerage business, and then also on the real estate investment firm, as soon as we introduced, well, the investment firm we ended up introducing right off the bat, but the brokerage side, when we introduce these, we actually do it at 8:30. So it's a 15-minute huddle. We have a manager's huddle, and then we have each department huddle. And then the investment firm, we have 9 full-time. We meet at 8:30. And in that, we go over any good news or updates, their number one key metric, their number one priority for the day, and any stacks or challenges. And we get through that within 15 minutes. That has been the number one thing for productivity, communication, and accountability. And so what's really interesting about what you said, and this is why I love this so much, it's holding you accountable so you don't make excuses as the entrepreneur to say sleep in after you had a late night. Like, you are waking up that next morning to get on that huddle. So I never thought of it that way, Tim, about holding yourself accountable to waking up the next morning. I think there's a lot of wisdom in what you said there. That's genius.
Yeah. And also, it's not just about showing up, Mark. It's about being ready to go. There's a big difference there, right? Because as business leaders, right, our team looks at us for motivation. They look at us for leadership. They look at us for support. And so, regardless of how late we stayed up or whatever's going on in our personal lives, that has to be pushed aside. You can't bring that into your morning with them, because your tone, your message, your attitude is going to shape what their days looks like. And if you start off in a poor mental mindset, or if you're not positive, and if you're not on, you're going to derail everyone's day and bring them all down, right? You're not going to get the best out of your team. So it's not just about showing up every morning, right? Anyone can show up, right? And, now people are working from home. Sometimes they show up from bed, right?
Yeah.
But it's you can't, as the business owner, you've got to be the one that inspires. You've got to be the leader, right? And how you lead is setting the expectation of those that will follow. So getting up and getting there for 8 o'clock. That's one challenge. And the bigger challenge is showing up with a positive mental attitude and putting yourself in the mindset of where you want the team and yourself to be for the day.
Love that. Love that 100%. And that's so true. As a leader, everybody looks to you. And so, okay, you work late, you wake up early, you got to be on. It's tough. I mean, being an entrepreneur, it is extremely difficult. And through the years doing that day after day, month after month, year after year, what's helped you continue to stay motivated, Tim? Like, this is waking up every day, after staying up late and then going through like major challenges. What keeps you motivated? What keeps you going?
It's a good question. And doing this for 15 years now, the way that I started, motivating myself 15 years ago, and the way that what it's morphed into now is a much more mature mindset. Because I've had 15 years to learn from all the mistakes I've made. And I think that the number one, if I had to put my number one, if I had to choose one thing that keeps me motivated, Mark, is that if I go back to the way I used to hire people and the way I used to interview people, I've asked lots of questions. I thought I was really smart, back in the day, and I'd ask these psychological based questions, and I'd throw testing in there, trying to weed out people and try to trick questions, see if people would be able to figure out the answer. And, none of that works. But one question that, I used to ask, is, can you tell me the difference between a job and a career, or what that means to you? And I heard lots of answers over the years, lots and lots of them. But I guess the answer, and if I was to think about what my difference between a job and a career is that a job is work that somebody pays you to do. And the only reason why you do it is because somebody pays you. It's transactional. Where a career is something that you're passionate about, that you wake up every day excited to do, that you have a genuine personal love for the work that you do. And you couldn't see yourself doing anything but that. I think that's exemplified when you look at people that retire. People that have jobs, right, put their 40 years in the factory. They're counting down the days. My mother-in-law was like that. She had a job, and she was literally counting down the days to retirement. Like 43 days to go, 21 days to go. And then as soon as she hit that retirement date, she hasn't worked a day since. And then I have other people in my life that were, say, retired from teaching, that just loved to be a teacher. What did they do right after retirement? They kept on teaching. And so for me, for myself, I have a career. My career is being an entrepreneur and starting businesses and building things and inventing things. That's what I'm passionate about. And that's what gets me out of bed every morning and gets me excited to be at that morning huddle, because I generally wake up every day loving what I do. And it's something that I've made a part of our company's vision for our team, is do what you love. And if this job is not what you love to do, then we'll find you another job to do. And certainly, my team can tell you stories about how they were hired to do one thing, and here they are, 10 plus years later doing something completely different, because their professional goals have changed over that time. And we've been able to find a better fit for them and get them reinvigorated, get them reinvested into what they do every day. And sometimes we can't, because you're hired to do this specific job, and if you don't love doing it, and there's many people out there. We have many of our positions are like a medical clerk, where you're just doing medical data entry all day. Now, if you try to take someone who is entrepreneurial or creative, and you sit in front of a computer and you say, for the next 8 hours, I want you to enter data, they're gonna hate it. But there are people out there that love that work. They're like, I just love doing this. I couldn't see myself. I just love the sense of accomplishment I get every day. I just want to get through this list of things, and I get satisfaction out of that. And this is what I want to be doing. That's finding the right person for the right job. So if you love what you do and you find a career path that helps you find that love every day, then it's easy to show up at 8 o'clock in the morning and be on.
Yeah. No, that's great. And so it's what I got from you there, Tim, is like there's an identity that's rooted in you that you build things. It's not a question of should I go in or not go in. It's like my identity is I am a builder, and my identity is this is my career, and this isn't just a job that I'm showing up to or counting down the days. I think that mindset change, half glass half full versus half empty, that is such a pivotal change there. It's the same with me and my businesses. It's not a matter of should I continue going or not. It just is. It's like, okay, there's a challenge that comes up or I don't feel good. It's just you got to show up anyways. It's never a question of, do I keep going or not? There's an identity there of this is what I do. And so I think for the entrepreneurs out there listening, that is first and foremost. If you're going to get into a business just for, the pay, eventually you're going to have enough to just, we'll just say, put food on the table. But if you really want to take it to the next level, if you can have this mindset that Tim's talking about having a career and becoming master at that career, there's an identity shift there, which makes your day-to-day challenges, you see them differently and you're able to operate and maneuver through them a lot easier. So I love that question that you had there, Tim, for your.
Entrepreneurship and how that differs from careers, right? Because you want to think that a career is a job, right? A career is something that's defined that you go and work for somebody else, never for yourself. But for those folks that are getting into, thinking about starting their own business or have a small business that they've started, that's your career, right? You still have a job, you still have responsibilities. And the worst part about being an entrepreneur, Mark, as I mentioned before about, getting to decide what you do every day. And there might be one part of being a business owner, an entrepreneur that you really love. Like I love the idea, I love conceptualizing, I love building. But there are plenty of things that I do not like to do as an entrepreneur. Like financial statements, anything to do with accounting. Oh my gosh, it's like it is like it's my defined antithesis. I just can't. I just hate it, but I got to do it. So those statements that I got to read through, the meetings I've got to sit through, right? And or regulatory affairs, dealing with the FDA and Health Canada. Oh my gosh, no, I can't. But it's all part and parcel to being an entrepreneur. So it is not easier to be an entrepreneur compared to that of saying, oh, I'm a lawyer or I'm working for emergency health services. That's easier in some ways to be an entrepreneur. You've got to be a special kind of person to be a successful entrepreneur, or because most people can't handle it. Most people can't do what needs to get done, and most of the failures that I've talked to people about, or we've kind of dissected businesses that we've looked at acquiring over the years, and why we're looking to acquire them, why that person wants to exit. It really boils down to they don't want to be doing what they're doing every day anymore because they didn't realize what it was going to be like, how many hats you have to wear as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, how difficult it is to get through your day. Because it's not, like you said earlier, it's not all sunshine and rainbows where you get to just choose whatever you do every day. It's not that at all. It's a small fraction of the work you need to do is the fun stuff. Everything else is just, it's for most entrepreneurs, not what you want to be doing every day, but it's got to get done.
Yeah, so well said. No, there's a lot of tough jobs you got to do, especially at the beginning as you're launching and you're playing business owner and you're playing operator and you're playing manager all in one, right? Okay, well let's change gears a bit now. So as an entrepreneur, you start making money, right? You start being able to put food on the table. You transition out of your other, say, full-time job, and now you're business owner full-time. You start generating income, and now you have excess income there that's sitting there. So what overall investing advice would you give a young entrepreneur that is now starting to generate income, access income, and they have money to invest? So, what advice would you give a younger entrepreneur that's listening today?
Well, that's a tough question. So let's preface that. Let's preface my response with the company is well financed. You don't have any debt. You're taking a reasonable salary, and after those three things are satisfied, you've got extra money. Is that what I'm understanding?
Sorry, Tim, can you say that again? So the preface, the three.
Sure. Um, that you are well financed. You've paid down all your debt. Your company has enough money to operate, and you're taking a reasonable salary. So,
So that's a really good first. Those are take us through that list again here, because I think this is a really good prerequisite now coming into investing, which ties in with the investing side. So go ahead and say those again there, Tim, as a business owner that are really important.
yeah. So number one is your business well financed, in that you've looked forward and looked at inventory needs or capital costs that might be coming up, like buying a new truck or buying new equipment, and making sure that you don't strip your company of working capital just for the sake of taking money out and investing it for yourself. So the worst position you can be in as an entrepreneur is having an opportunity that you could take advantage of and build your business, and then not having the money to do it.
Yeah.
So keeping your company well financed and having a capital reserve is key to long-term success. And I would say look at your operating expense and make sure that you've got 6 months of OPEX in the bank,
that's right.
right? Before you even think about taking money out of your business for yourself.
Yeah, that's great. 6 months of savings. That's great. 6 months of expenses. Good suggestion.
Yeah. The second thing is debt. You know, um, the government has provided us with some loans during through COVID. There's lots of banks like BDC that will do loans to help businesses. Certainly there's been times where we've used BDC. They're a great organization to work with. If we were looking to do an acquisition or grow our business, we've taken some short-term loans with a focus on how quickly can we pay these back. We don't want to pay interest, and we don't want debt. We've for specific capital projects, we've never taken on debt, as I mentioned before, for operating expenses. And so if your debt is either manageable, like for example, if you've got a lease on it or financed a truck for your business, I'm not saying pay off the truck before you start taking money out, because that's a different category of expense. I'm saying your credit cards are maxed out and you're taking money out and you're thinking about investing. That's a bad move, because every entrepreneur starting off with is going to lever up on their personal credit, right? So pay your credit down before you and pay those bills from your business. And then the third one was pay yourself a reasonable salary, right? Don't pay yourself an unreasonable salary. Now, and this is something that most new business owners forget to do, or they don't want to, because they're trying to think that, oh, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm going to pay less tax, right? And I'll take income in other ways from my business that's not a salary. It's a huge mistake, especially in Canada. The United States has some different rules, but we're talking about Canada today. And the way that the Canadian tax system works, there's no tax benefit any longer, whether you're drawing a salary or taking dividends for your business. And with CRA's refocusing on audits for small business and the extra staff they're bringing on for the purpose of auditing, to fill the government coffers again, entrepreneurs, small business owners these days have to really, really be careful in the way that they're taking money out of the business. And then, if you're looking and have a mortgage, you own a home already, or you're looking to buy a home as an entrepreneur, and you're paying yourself like a very, very low salary, and then putting your vehicle through the business, and maybe not taking that as a employee expense, or You're putting other expenses through the business, which is really easy to do as a sole proprietor or a small business owner. Um, when the banks look at your T4s, they're going to look at that and say, you don't make enough money to qualify for this mortgage or this loan, or your credit worthiness is going to be low. So you've got to pay yourself well. You got to pay your taxes. That's what it comes down to. But you've got to pay yourself a good salary, and so that it helps you credit wise, it helps you financially, and certainly then you can personally take advantage of things like RSP deferrals, TFSA contributions. So that would be one way to grow your wealth, right? Defer some of that tax in an RSP. And gosh, I'm not going to get into whether or not RSPs are an investment or not, and whether that tax deferment is something that entrepreneurs should consider. But pay yourself a decent salary. And if the banks look at that from a 3 to 5 year perspective and they see that your small business is producing consistent income for you and those paychecks are landing in your bank account every other week, they're going to treat you a lot differently than an entrepreneur that just takes sporadic huge dividends at the end of the year for income, or because they just want to see consistent income coming in because it lowers their risk for you. And I see a lot of entrepreneurs that want to maybe keep some money in their company and then invest that passively without taking it out personally and paying the tax on it. I get it. I've been there. I've had many conversations with our accounting team on how to minimize tax, but CRA is always one step ahead, right? They're always looking at ways to force small business owners to move that money out of their CCPCs, their Canadian Controlled Private Corporations, small corps, right? And they want you to realize the tax purpose personally. So I get back to your kind of first question, or your question, Mark, about what would I suggest you do to build wealth as an entrepreneur. Number one, credit is as important as what your net worth is. So you've got to look after your credit, because that's going to open up opportunities for you to grow wealth-wise down the road. And you're going to have to pay taxes one day. You might as well pay it today, because you don't want to realize a huge capital gain down the road as you move money out of your company or from you personally, especially with the new capital gains taxes changes that we've seen this month. And if you've done that, if you have invested into your business, you've paid down debt, you're taking a reasonable salary, you have built your credit worthiness up with the bank, then you can look at, what do I do with everything that's left over, right? And for that, I would say they call you and talk about real estate investment, and look at some long kind of buy and holds, and not be worried about short-term high-risk investments. And I guess I'll finish up with this one last thought, Mark, is that entrepreneurs in general, including myself, like, we all have this dream that one day our companies are going to be worth so much money, and someone's going to roll in, because we hear about this, right? Like big checks being written, the unicorns of, oh, this person sold this real estate brokerage for $120 million, or this technology SaaS app got sold for $1 billion, one of those unicorns, right? And it's like, oh, one day I'm going to have that. You, as a business owner, get real. It's probably not going to happen. Statistically improbable that you'll be able to build a business that somebody else will pay you a lot of money for. It doesn't happen that often. If you think that investing in your business and growing your business is going to be your nest egg one day, you're going to say, oh, one day I'll sell my business and I'll have this multi-million-dollar exit and I'll be able to retire or live off passive income from that. Get real. It's probably not going to happen, because most businesses out there are just a way for you to make income, not build this, long-term payday. If you go into it with scrimping and taking the minimum amount of money out and trying to build this thing to sell it down the road, it's the wrong attitude, in my opinion, right?
Yeah, Tim, that there's so many nuggets. I'm just going to do a quick summary of all the things you said. So being well financed, super important. 6 months of expenses in cash is ideal. Uh, Super important to pay off debt as well. The bad kind of debt, right? So when I say bad, your credit cards, any sort of like high interest loans, you want to make sure if you have a mortgage or let's say a payment on your, let's just say the building that you bought, or say even a car that you bought, like that's not the kind of bad debt we're talking about. High interest debt, paying that off, and then paying a reasonable salary. This is such an important part for a business owner. And it goes back to what Tim was saying about the income side of it is really important. That's why big part why you build a business is to create income. But what it's also important on taking the salary is it forces the business to produce more profit. So if you're not taking income, personally income, that means you're not paying yourself. And so you can easily inflate what your true profitability is. And it can be smoke and mirrors. Because if you were to replace yourself, you'd have to pay that salary anyways. So as a business owner, it's really important to pay yourself because it forces you to look at your business as it truly is and looking at the facts. And the facts are that maybe you're not making a profit after you pay yourself a reasonable salary. And so I think, Tim, that reasonable salary is good for a number of things. One, you had mentioned the income side of it, not thinking down the road that I'm going to sell and that I'm going to be putting everything in the business because somebody may not come along, or the industry might wipe you out, or there might be some technology that comes along, innovation, and you no longer have a business. Most businesses out there will not be alive in 10 years from now. So the goal is, and this is a big part of us launching this podcast and the show, is that the two main ways that people make income and build wealth is number one, build a business, generate a lot of income, and then redeploy that into real estate and invest it. And so you're taking money off the table and you're investing it, taking money off the table and investing it. That's how majority of the wealthy out there, they build businesses and they invest in real estate. And so what you had said there, Tim, about looking at it as an income source rather than I'm just going to sell it one day, I think there's real wisdom in what you had said there. So so good. Those lessons there, any entrepreneur following what you had suggested there, I think is wonderful. So, Tim, what are you excited about right now? And then we're going to get into a rapid fire and wrap this up. What are you excited about moving forward?
Um, being a technologist deep down in my soul, I'm a huge fan of technology. And I mentioned earlier back in '08 building my first website and how much has changed in 15 years. It just blows my mind. And I was saying a few things. I said a couple things lately that really stuck with me. And you just kind of alluded to one of them was, what does it look like when a lot of these jobs are replaced by technology in the next 10 to 20 years? And not all jobs, but some jobs certainly are going to be done faster and better by machines than you look at Elon Musk's robot and some of his forecasts on what that looks like. Where it's going to be 1-to-1 with humans, 10 billion robots, 10 billion people, and what that looks like from an income for his companies, and how that is going to dramatically change the production landscape or any sort of general labor position. 24 hours a day, no complaints, no strikes, no sick time. It's going to be a different world. And the other thing I was saying to my wife the other day was my daughter just turned 16. She just got her driver's license, and my wife drives a Tesla and with full self driving. It's incredible how quickly that technology has changed and become actually usable in the last 5 years. And I said to her, I said, it's quite probable that my daughter's generation will be the last generation that will drive. You think about it, by the time that, she's going to have maybe start a family, have children, and my grandchildren are going to be 16, we're talking 25 years from now, right? Are people going to be driving cars in 25 years when right now they don't have to? It's wild. So when you start thinking about your business that you're doing today, right? The business that you want to start, the business that you're growing, the business that you're trying to keep relevant as an entrepreneur. It's the challenge of relevancy that is should be a number one concern to everybody right now, because the world is changing quickly. Technology is it reminds me of like the late 90s, early thousands with computer chips, right? And how quickly the speed increased in that time frame. I'm seeing the same thing kind of repeat right now when we look at things like AI and energy portability, with high density batteries, because that's always been kind of the Achilles heel of things like robots, cars. But now we're seeing energy densities rise, and now that's allowing these technologies to be more portable. And with the acceleration of money flowing into compute platforms and other types of technologies, we're seeing this growth again. I don't think anyone's prepared of what's going to happen in the next decade. And my advice to all the entrepreneurs out there, and what keeps me up at night, is how is my business relevant 10 years from now? And what strategies do I need to put in place today? What thoughts do I have to have in order for me to stay relevant in our industry? And there's not an industry out there, Mark, that should not be very, very concerned about relevancy right now. And you think about building homes. Well, I've seen robots build homes,
Yeah.
right, where you've got these large trucks with these,
Well,
and they're 3D printing homes. Right?
this is yeah, staying relevant in 10 years. What a great question that, as entrepreneur, it's very easy to miss it, right? Because you get busy, being busy, being busy. I got stuff to do today, right? It's just as the CEO of your company, that is your job to be looking down 10 years down the road. And how can we prepare now? Because at the end of the day, if you're no longer relevant, your business is no longer relevant, they look to you as the business owner. You are the head. They're looking to you. Nobody else is doing this. And I think that's such a key idea. It's a good question, Tim, that you said. It's like, will our kids be the last generation to be driving cars? Like, that's how fast innovation is happening. So very cool. Well, let's wrap up here, Tim, with some rapid fire. So I got 3 questions here for you. And we'll wrap this up. So, all right. First one is, which book has had the biggest impact, whether on your business growth or wealth creation?
Well, I'd say that Jack Canfield Success Principles book had the biggest impact on me, because it started this and gave me the confidence to start this company, because I saw that somebody else had done it and I just copied them. So, answer.
Yeah, very cool. Success Principles by Jack Canfield. All right. How would others describe you in 3 words?
That's a tough one. It's
If you were to
it's a
describe, you got 3 different words maybe to describe Tim. What would they be?
I'd have to say demanding, right? And demanding, not in a way that is unfair, but high expectations. Ambitious. I always want to keep on pushing the envelope. Again, part of that kind of relevance conversation, but a bigger one about continuing the growth of the company, not just staying stagnant and say, oh, we're here, we're at the finish line, let's just put it on cruise control. And the third one would be, and this is a work in progress, would be accountable, right? I like to be accountable. It's easy for business owners to say, hey, I want to hold my team accountable. But I'm always promoting the idea of, yeah, hey, call me out, right? If I'm not following through on expectations, if I'm not giving you what you need to be successful, if I'm setting those expectations and then demanding, being demanding, you've got to reach this goal. You've got to get there. This is where we need you to be. Get it done. Right. But if I'm not doing that as well, if I'm not following through on my promises to the team or to our stakeholders, then there's a big problem at play. So being accountable, and I said it's a work in progress because I don't think you're ever done being more accessible and offering the opportunity to be held accountable as the boss, as this, the owner of the company, as the entrepreneur. You've got to always be working on, hey, tell me how I'm doing. Should I be doing more? And then if I commit to doing it, hold me accountable.
Love that. Yeah, high expectations. You have the ambitious and then the accountable side of it, and like you had mentioned, getting feedback from people and being, we'll just say, humble enough, have the humility to actually take feedback from others and get that feedback. That's great. And just to wrap up, last question, Tim, what advice would you give your younger self?
Wow. I suppose, I'd have to, look at that, not simply like, oh, my younger self, what advice would I give? I'd have to say, at different stages in my life, younger than I am now, what advice would I give myself? And certainly, if I roll back to my early 20s when I was not living, a life that necessarily I'm proud of today, with shirking responsibilities without being focused on my future. There was that turning point in my mid 20s where I took responsibility for my life. I wish I'd done that a few years earlier. I just got my stuff together earlier, right? I needed a little slap around the side of the head, maybe, and just said, hey, get it together. You're failing. You're failing yourself, and you're failing the people around you. Um, in maybe my late 20s, I would have given myself, when I was starting to build the business, I would have said, um, consider starting your family a little bit earlier. Um, and because family is such an important part of business, people don't think about it, right? They don't think that your children and your partner are going to be a big part of your business, but they are a huge part of your business. They give you purpose, happiness. They improve your life in so many ways that you can't even quantify, and that all benefits business because you're just a better person for them. So I would have loved to have started a family sooner because I see how that's positively impacted my life, and not for just what I said too, but also giving me purpose and a mission. When you have kids, right, Mark? It's like, oh, I want stuff for them now. I want to lead by example. I want to build wealth for them down the road as well. It's not just about you anymore. So it just gives you a greater breadth of perspective, starting a family a little bit um, earlier in life. So I would say, that would be, if I could go back, those, you know, getting my stuff together earlier and starting a family earlier and not putting that off until XYZ goal was achieved, and then I'll start a family.
That's good. Yeah, kids are good motivators, that's for sure. You want to do well, not just for you and your spouse, but for the kids. So good. Where can the listeners here, Tim, where can they find out more about your business or businesses if they want to find out more about you?
Well, Mark, I'm a hermit. I'm not that type of entrepreneur that kind of puts myself out there.
More
I like
your business
I like
side of it.
yeah, our main business is Verified Diagnostics, and so if you want to check out what we do and a little bit more about the business that I've built, just go to verifieddiagnostics.com, and you'll find all the related businesses likely through that website. Or if you want to have a chat, I'm always open, Mark, to meeting and networking. Uh, about entrepreneurship and taking time to share what little I've been able to learn over the past 15 years with other entrepreneurs. So you can find me on LinkedIn as well. That's my only social network. And so, feel free to reach out, connect with me on LinkedIn. And, if you wanted to follow up on any of the things I've talked about today, I'm more than happy to jump on a Zoom or meet with you and chat some more.
Very cool. Well, Tim, phenomenal. Very, this conversation could keep on going, but appreciate your time here today. I know you're super busy, and you're a good friend, and appreciate you a lot, and the gold nuggets you were able to drop here for all the entrepreneurs. For those of you that are listening, want to encourage you guys to come back and listen to our next show, where we are speaking with super successful business owners, entrepreneurs, talking about how they built their businesses and how they build their wealth as well. All the best, and thanks again, Tim.